The town is beginning to reveal treasures that no one ever thought were valuable. Ancient stones hidden beneath an ordinary stream may hold extraordinary power. A mysterious girl appears beneath the stars. And while Chen Ping'an searches for money and a way to survive, powerful figures are quietly watching his every step. Meanwhile, Liu Xianyang's family heirloom draws dangerous attention. Zhao Yao prepares to leave the town, and Master Ruan begins to move behind the scenes. What once looked like an ordinary village is becoming a battlefield of fate. And Chen Ping'an may be standing closer to its center than he realizes. This is Sword Comes, Episode 7. Then the old woman pointed at Zhao Yao. Your grandfather also said, gentleness, kindness, respect, thrift, and humility may not seem impressive at first, but in truth they are how a family preserves the vitality of its descendants. My grandson has these qualities as well. After saying this, the old woman smiled. That damned old man, sharp-tongued his entire life, and only at the very end did he finally manage to say something pleasant. Zhao Yao looked slightly puzzled and was about to speak when his grandmother gave a wistful sigh. Old now, truly old. The boy swallowed what he had been about to say, smiled, and stepped forward to support her arm. Grandmother will live as long as the southern mountains. You're still young. The old woman reached out a withered hand and patted the back of her precious grandson's hand. You're already better than your grandfather. You may study books without knowing how to lecture people about all that damned philosophy, but at least you know how to say things that make others happy. Zhao Yao smiled. Grandfather truly was learned. Master Qi also said grandfather followed the proper path in scholarship and had profound insight into the meaning of the word righteousness. The old woman immediately revealed herself. Pride practically overflowed from her face, though she still forced out a disdainful snort. Of course he did. You have to remember who chose that man in the first place. Zhao Yao pursed his lips, barely suppressing a laugh. The old woman led him toward the chair behind the writing desk. Only then did Zhao Yao notice a wooden carving resting on the desk. It resembled a coiled sleeping dragon and had been carved so vividly that it almost seemed alive. Yet after studying it more carefully, Zhao Yao discovered something strange. The green wooden dragon had eyes, but no pupils. The old woman picked up a brush that had already been dipped in ink. It was a small writing brush whose handle had been fashioned from a branch of the old scholar tree. Holding it with both hands, she tremblingly offered it to the eldest grandson of the direct Zhao line. Zhao Yao accepted the brush without understanding what she intended. Then his shoulders sank. His grandmother had placed a hand upon it. Following that pressure, Zhao Yao sat down in the chair reserved for the head of the Zhao clan. The old woman stepped backward. Her expression became solemn beyond measure. Zhao Yao, sit properly. Today, on behalf of every ancestor of the Zhao family, you will dot the dragon's eyes. Broken clay statues lay crooked among thick weeds in a place almost no one visited. It had been this way for countless years. More damaged statues continued to find their way here from time to time, and the people of the town had long since grown accustomed to seeing them. In truth, there was little reverence left in their hearts. Old people would occasionally nag their children not to come here and play. The children still came anyway. They played hide-and-seek among the ruins, caught crickets, and wandered between the broken idols. Perhaps when those children grew old and bent-backed, they too would tell the next generation not to play here. Then another generation would repeat the same thing. Year after year, no storms, no waves, nothing extraordinary. The statues before Chen Ping'an had fallen apart badly. Heads had toppled, bodies had broken, hands had snapped off. Some looked as though someone had forcibly stitched the pieces together, just well enough to preserve their general shape. Their faces, at least, were still recognizable. A straw-sandaled boy hurried over from the direction of Mud Bottle Alley. 3 offering coins were clenched tightly in his palm. Once he arrived, he paced back and forth while murmuring under his breath. Then, with obvious familiarity, he found one particular broken deity statue and crouched before it. He looked around, no one. Only then did he quietly slip 1 coin into a crack in the shattered idol. He stood, found a second statue, then a third. He did the same with each. Before leaving, Chen Ping'an stood alone among the green grass. He pressed his palms together, lowered his head, and prayed silently. Broken pieces, peaceful years. Broken pieces, peaceful years. It was an old play on words. Shattered piece by piece sounded almost the same as peace year after year. I hope you can protect my parents in their next lives so they won't have to suffer anymore. And if you can, please tell them that I'm doing very well now. They don't need to worry about me. By dusk, Chen Ping'an was returning to town through the eastern gate. The scruffy gatekeeper was still humming to himself. He had just reached the line. Not 1 inch of time should be wasted. Glory and wealth may all drift away. Perhaps Chen Ping'an's hurried footsteps disturbed him. The man opened his eyes and found himself staring directly at the jogging straw-sandaled boy. The instant he realized who it was, his mood soured. He waved irritably. Go, go, go! How much could an inch of your time possibly be worth? If you ever manage to touch even one of the 4 words glory, wealth, rank, and honor, you should burn incense and thank every god in heaven. Chen Ping'an ran past. Then he raised one hand high, spread all 5 fingers, and waved vigorously. The meaning was obvious. Between the 2 of them, there were still 5 copper coins worth of friendship and incense. The gatekeeper spat viciously. Not a decent thing about you either. The boy's figure quickly disappeared. The man raised his head and looked at the clear blue sky, beautiful as a flawless glaze. He rubbed the stubble on his chin. Master Qi once recited some poem? Something about good things? And colored glass? An ox cart was slowly leaving the town. A green-robed young scholar with an excellent reputation sat on the cart. The driver was a plain-faced, middle-aged man. The gatekeeper immediately waved. Yaoer! Don't leave yet! Your older brother here has a few words stuck in his belly. I only remember something about good things and colored glass. The rest won't come back no matter how hard I think. You've got more learning than I do. Tell me. Zhao Yao held a traveling bundle in his arms. His spirits were high as he called back. Nothing fine beneath heaven is truly lasting. Colored clouds scatter, and colored glass is easily broken. The gatekeeper thrust up a thumb. Now that's Yaoer for you. Top-notch learning. When you make a name for yourself, don't forget to come back and visit your old brother. Maybe one day you can even take your teacher's place and teach the children in our town. That would be pretty good too. Zhao Yao froze for a moment. Then he cupped his fists and smiled. I'll gladly accept your auspicious words. The gatekeeper was delighted. He pulled an embroidered pouch from his sleeve, flicked his wrist, and tossed it high toward the green-robed scholar. For all these years, I've been making you write Spring Festival couplets for free. The important thing is, you were always decent about it, and never complained. Your older brother has never been wrong about people. Here, take a little something for the road. May your journey be smooth. Zhao Yao hurriedly caught the pouch. We'll meet again. The gatekeeper smiled and waved after the ox cart. Only after it had begun moving away did he murmur, That'll be difficult. The straw-sandaled boy headed deeper into the town. Zhao Yao's ox cart rolled out toward the wider world beyond it. The 2 passed each other. The gatekeeper sat on a stump and began counting on his fingers. The great sway boy with the bamboo basket and golden carp. That little brat of Widow Gu from Mud Bottle Alley. And Yaoer from Fortune Street. That already makes 3. But there are still so many people charging in afterward. Doesn't that mean only one poor bastard will be left working himself half to death? Maybe I should take advantage of the chance and find myself a filial disciple too. Someone to pound my back and massage my shoulders. He rubbed the dark wrinkles on his cheeks and chuckled. If it's a girl, then she'd better be a pretty female disciple. That would be best, though I suppose the face could be a little worse. But the legs absolutely have to be long. The man was famous throughout town as a shameless rogue. He clasped both hands behind his head, leaned back, looked at the sky, and hummed happily. The moment he imagined pleasant days ahead, all his worries vanished. He suddenly felt there was tremendous beauty between heaven and earth. Before leaving Mud Bottle Alley, Chen Ping'an had agreed with Liu Xianyang and the girl in black that they would meet directly at Liu Xianyang's house. When Chen Ping'an arrived, the door was unlocked. He pushed it open and walked into the main room. Liu Xianyang was carefully wiping down his family's ancestral armor with a clean white cloth. Miss Ning had once again put on her veiled hat. A saber hung at her waist, while she casually held the long sword in its snow-white scabbard. For some reason, Chen Ping'an always felt she looked slightly disgusted by that sword. On the table lay the old Liu family heirloom that had been passed down through generations. They called it treasure armor. To Chen Ping'an it looked terrifyingly ugly. The enormous suit of armor was covered in steel ridges like the knotted roots of dead trees. 5 deep claw marks ran parallel across it, beginning at the left shoulder and raking diagonally all the way down to the right side of the waist. Neither boy had ever been able to understand those marks. They could not imagine what kind of gigantic beast from the deep mountains could have left wounds like that. Later, the imperial court had even sealed off the mountain and forbidden commoners from entering to cut firewood or burn charcoal. Chen Ping'an and Liu Xianyang had almost never violated that ban. The armor was a large part of the reason why. Chen Ping'an found it strange. The iron armor was black as charcoal and ugly beyond words, yet Liu Xianyang treasured it enormously. He treated it as the most important heirloom of his family. Even Chen Ping'an, despite their friendship, had only been allowed to look at it once over all these years. Before half an incense stick had burned, Liu Xianyang had carefully placed it back into its red lacquered chest as though returning a deity to an altar. But when Chen Ping'an noticed Liu Xianyang repeatedly stealing glances at Ning Yao, he understood. Liu Xianyang had always been like this. Whenever he saw a pretty girl, his eyes stopped obeying him. It was not necessarily because he had truly fallen for her. He simply loved showing off. In summers past, for example, he would strip naked to bathe in the stream near the covered bridge. If a girl around their age happened to pass while carrying grain or leading cattle, Liu Xianyang would immediately want to display himself. First, he would scramble onto a large rock on the bank. Then he would cough loudly. Song Jixin called this announcing himself to the world. Afterward, Liu Xianyang would plunge dramatically into the water. Chen Ping'an's eyesight was excellent. From far away, he could see the girls' expressions clearly. He had often wanted to tell Liu Xianyang the truth. Some of the pretty girls rolled their eyes. Some muttered curses. Most simply pretended they had seen nothing. Not one of them had ever lit up with admiration and thought, "What a heroic young man." Of course, later Liu Xianyang somehow became hopelessly fixated on Song Jixin's maid, Zhigui. After that, it was as though no other pretty woman existed in his eyes. Even now, his display before Ning Yao was mostly because he did not want this proud, cold outsider to look down on him. He did not want her thinking that just because she carried a saber and sword, she was some unbeatable heavenly king. His Liu family possessed something unique in this town too. Once Chen Ping'an arrived, Ning Yao looked around the room. Finally, she set the sword on top of an old cabinet carved with flowers and plants, its paint chipped and mottled. To make room, she moved aside a number of bottles and jars. Then she discovered an inlaid picture on the wall behind the cabinet. A golden osmanthus tree rose beneath a full moon. Ning Yao turned around. "I'm leaving the sword here. Neither of you is to touch it. If you do, whatever happens is your responsibility. I'm not joking." Liu Xianyang was too busy polishing the armor to care. From time to time, he lowered his head and breathed softly onto it before rubbing it smooth with his sleeve. He was completely immersed in his happiness. Chen Ping'an promised, "We definitely won't." Ning Yao looked at Liu Xianyang. "This cabinet itself isn't worth much, but don't casually sell the inlaid picture of the golden osmanthus beneath the moon." Without even looking up, Liu Xianyang said, "I've hated that thing since I was little. If you want it, just pry it off and take it." Ning Yao naturally wore the expression of someone watching a precious pearl being thrown before swine. Still, curiosity got the better of her. What material was used to make the picture? Liu Xianyang turned and glanced at it. "That thing is hundreds of years old. How would I know? Even my grandfather probably couldn't have guessed." Chen Ping'an spoke softly. "It should be made from small stones picked up by the stream. They come in many colors, but Liu Xianyang's ancestors must have selected only the golden ones, crushed them first, then fitted and pasted the fragments together. We call that kind of stone Snake Gall Stone." Ning Yao asked, "Stone? Are there many in the stream?" Chen Ping'an smiled. "If you want them, Miss Ning, I could collect a whole basket for you in one day. No one around here thinks they're worth anything. Only Gukan likes them. He often goes out alone to pick them up." Ning Yao sighed. She gave the impoverished boy from Mud Bottle Alley a long look, a pauper sitting on mountains of gold and silver. Chen Ping'an was stunned. "These stones are valuable outside." Ning Yao adjusted the edge of her veiled hat. "The price depends on whose hands they fall into. And even if they reach someone who knows what they're doing, whether they're useful still depends on luck. With good luck, one stone is enough. With bad luck, you could pile them into a mountain and still accomplish nothing. But either way, they have value. A great deal of value. The real question is whether they can be carried out of this town. That part is crucial." Liu Xianyang cut in. "There is something strange about them. Once you take them away from the stream and let wind and sunlight touch them, the colors gradually fade. Rain and snow make it much worse. Other than that, there's nothing unusual," Ning Yao said regretfully. As expected, Chen Ping'an hesitated. "Why don't I collect a large basket tomorrow and we can test it? What if there are exceptions?" She shook her head. "For me, there's no point." Liu Xianyang had already returned the armor to its room for safekeeping. Now he leaned against the doorway and laughed. "Chen Ping'an is obsessed with money. I wouldn't be surprised if he went to the stream tonight to dig for stones." Ning Yao gave only one brief reply. "Let's go." When she reached the door, she turned back. "I'll keep your hairpin and the prescription safe for you. But tomorrow, you still need to come to Mud Bottle Alley and decoct my medicine." Chen Ping'an nodded. "No problem." Ning Yao thought for a moment. Her expression became grave. "There were 8 outsiders who entered the town around the same time as I did. The strongest should be that old man from Righteous Sun Mountain. He came specifically to escort the little girl. Next is the great Sui eunuch who injured me. After him comes Liu Jiamao, who has already taken Gukan away. And don't underestimate that smiling woman who hides a knife behind her expression. So if either of you encounters the old master from Righteous Sun Mountain, avoid conflict if at all possible. If trouble begins, delay. Do not fight them. Do not imagine you might get lucky. Drag things out until I arrive, no matter what." Liu Xianyang asked quietly. "On our own territory, would those outsiders who don't even know the local roads really dare kill someone?" Chen Ping'an looked at him. Then he nodded. "They would. Liu Xianyang swallowed. Chen Ping'an suddenly asked, "Do you remember what Taoist Liu the fortune teller with the street stall said to you?" Liu Xianyang thought hard. After struggling to recall the words, he scratched his head. "How am I supposed to remember clearly? I only know it was a bunch of unlucky nonsense that sounded awful. Something about a great disaster, burning incense, and who knows what else. It was a mess. At the time, I figured he was just talking rubbish to scare people and cheat them out of money." Chen Ping'an turned toward Ning Yao. She snapped fiercely. "He doesn't even remember the fortune verse. How am I supposed to interpret it for him? Do you really think I'm some immortal who knows everything?" Chen Ping'an had no idea what had happened. He could not understand why Miss Ning had suddenly become so angry. She quickly left the house. Compared with her slow, leisurely arrival, she now walked away like a gust of irritated wind. As the saber-carrying girl strode through the broad alley, she wondered whether she should find a few books and study them when she had time. The thought of traveling the world in the future, cleanly cutting off an enemy's head, then boldly improvising several lines of poetry, even if no one else was around to hear it, made Ning Yao feel that she would look extremely impressive indeed. Just as Ning Yao was happily imagining the future, a familiar figure flashed past her like the wind. "Miss Ning, see you tomorrow." By the time the voice finished carrying through the alley, the figure was almost already at the far end. The straw-sandaled boy had a basket on his back and was moving at astonishing speed. Ning Yao stood there in stunned silence. Then she muttered, "He really is that greedy for money?" Chen Ping'an ran all the way beneath scattered starlight. He left the town and headed directly toward the stream. Even in the darkness, he was not much slower than during the day. He deliberately made his way toward one of the deeper stretches near the covered bridge, where the water ran deeper than elsewhere. He chose a section where it only reached his knees, removed the large basket from his back, bent down, and took out a smaller bamboo basket hidden inside. He tied the small basket at his waist. Then he removed his straw sandals, rolled up his trouser legs, and stepped into the stream to search for stones. The cut on his left hand obviously could not be soaked in water, so he had no choice but to use only his right hand. In truth, stones from the exposed shallows were easy to gather. But according to Liu Xianyang, once they were removed from the stream, their colors changed badly. After Ning Yao's simple explanation, Chen Ping'an could now roughly understand the mystery. The stones reminded him of the years when he followed Old Man Yao over hills and ridges searching for clay. Ordinary mud might look exactly the same in two places separated only by one mountain. Yet if you tasted it, the flavor could be entirely different. Old Man Yao used to say, "Move a tree and it dies. Move a person and they live. Move clay and it becomes Buddha." A handful of earth might change almost immediately once it left the ground where it was born. The little stream had no name. Its stones ranged from fist-sized pieces to pebbles no larger than a toe. They came in every imaginable color. But generations of townspeople had grown up seeing them lying quietly beneath clear water. No one considered them rare. If someone deliberately carried away baskets of those stones, the townsfolk would probably think he had eaten too much and had nowhere useful to spend his strength. With all that energy, why not do another day's farm work? If that was not foolish, what was? Chen Ping'an bent at the waist and waded through the stream, shifting stones aside. He ignored the large ones and picked 7 or 8 smaller pieces, each different in size and color, placing them into the bamboo basket. Some were the golden-orange color of autumn tangerines. Some were soft white, like the skin of a newborn child. Some were black as ink, yet gleamed from within. Others were deep red like peach blossoms. There were even green-blue ones like river shrimp. None of these colors was especially rare here. These rustic stones, known as Snake Gall Stones, were mostly small, but they felt unusually heavy in the hand. If one held them high beneath daylight or even before candlelight at night, the patterns inside became clearly visible. Fine threads seemed to twist through the stone. At times they resembled strands of silk. At times they looked like tiny snakes or fish wriggling inside. Viewed from a little farther away, the colors flashed like fish scales or serpent scales. Nearly an hour passed. The small basket at Chen Ping'an's waist was almost full. He returned to where he had left his straw sandals and the larger basket by the bank. He pulled several handfuls of tall reeds, tied their ends together, and wove a rough lining across the bottom of the large basket. Only then did he transfer the stones one by one. He gathered his sandals, secured the fish basket, hoisted the large basket onto his back, and climbed onto the bank. At the next bend in the stream, he stopped again. Off came the sandals. Down came the basket. Back into the stream he went. After collecting stones for a long while, Chen Ping'an straightened and looked up at the night sky. He hoped to see a shooting star. Unfortunately, he did not have that kind of luck tonight. After a brief pause, he lowered his head and continued working by faint starlight, relying on his extraordinary eyesight. Every time he found another suitable stone, a little joy rose in his heart. To Chen Ping'an, each stone felt like another piece of hope. Without realizing it, he had collected more than half a basket, around 80 stones in total. The largest was bigger than his fist. Its color was astonishing. It looked like fresh chicken blood frozen into crystal, bright and beautiful without seeming gruesome. For such a large stone, it was almost completely flawless. Chen Ping'an climbed back onto the bank and headed toward the next stretch of water. In his hand, he played with a medium-sized Snake Gall Stone. It was pale green, even lighter than the celadon glaze used in the town, smooth and pleasant to the touch. Chen Ping'an liked it the moment he saw it. Eventually, he reached a broad stone slope beside the stream. On hot summer days, children from town often came here to swim. The pool below was deep. At its deepest point, the water would have reached twice Chen Ping'an's height. Only the depths beneath the covered bridge were deeper. Children with good swimming skills loved competing here to see who could stay underwater the longest. Chen Ping'an had chosen this pool because he and Liu Xianyang had once discovered that Snake Gall Stones were especially plentiful here. One time, while showing off his swimming ability, Liu Xianyang had deliberately carried a huge Snake Gall Stone through the water. Chen Ping'an remembered that stone clearly. It had been at least as large as Gu Can's head. Its body was translucent white with delicate traces of pink inside, like peach blossoms frozen in ice. Liu Xianyang had found the stone interesting and ordered Chen Ping'an to help carry it home. But once they returned to town, he lost interest and told Chen Ping'an to deal with it however he wanted. The moment Chen Ping'an entered Mud Bottle Alley with the stone, Ji Gui from next door inexplicably began following him. She said nothing. She merely stared at the stone. Her eyes looked exactly like Chen Ping'an's whenever he saw steaming buns being sold in Apricot Blossom Alley. He could not withstand that hungry stare, so he gave her the stone. Ji Gui could not lift it. She nearly dropped it on her own feet. In the end, Chen Ping'an had to carry it into Song Jixin's courtyard for her. What happened to the stone afterward, he never knew. A stone clear as water. Peach blossoms floating within, like the peach blossoms after rain in Peach Leaf Alley, fresh and vividly alive. Before today, Chen Ping'an had never understood what was special about that stone. He had only thought that despite its enormous size, it was extremely beautiful. Chen Ping'an sighed, then he suddenly stopped. About 30 paces away, on the rocky bank beside the stream, sat a girl dressed in green. Her cheeks were puffed out. And somehow, despite already having so much food in her mouth, she was still stuffing in more. Chen Ping'an's first thought was that she must have been a starving ghost in her previous life. Otherwise, how could someone be this desperately hungry in the middle of the night? He thought for a moment and decided not to approach too closely. He did not want to disturb her late-night meal. But he did not turn around either. He had already decided that no matter what, he would test his luck in this deep pool tonight. Even if he could only collect 1 or 2 stones each dive, enough dives would still add up. Besides, the Snake Gall Stones in the deeper water tended to be larger than those elsewhere. Their colors also seemed more beautiful. Chen Ping'an was not as good a swimmer as Liu Xianyang, but he was far from bad. He had expected the strange girl to finish eating at some point. Instead, after finishing 1 piece of food, she immediately reached beside herself for another, then another. Her cheeks kept swelling. Chen Ping'an, carrying a basket already more than half full of stones, knew that diving would consume a great deal of strength, so he leaned sideways and carefully lowered the basket to the ground. He underestimated the green-clad girl's hearing. The basket had barely touched the stone when her ears twitched. Her gaze snapped toward him. Chen Ping'an could hardly tell her, "Take your time eating," so he could only offer an awkward smile. The girl's expression became blank. She hiccuped twice in succession. Then she seemed to choke. She quickly straightened her chest and slapped herself several times. Only then did Chen Ping'an notice that although she was young, she was remarkably full-figured. From the neck downward, she was built no less generously than many women who had already borne children. The fabric across her chest was stretched extremely tight. Chen Ping'an immediately looked away. There was no lustful thought in his mind at all. The girl finally remembered that she had brought a water flask. She turned her back toward Chen Ping'an, tilted her head, and took a large drink. Only then did her breathing return to normal. The straw-sandaled boy had just one simple thought. The cloth used for this girl's clothes must be expensive. Otherwise, it could never endure that much tension. The green-clad girl resumed eating. This time, she was far more restrained. At least her cheeks no longer swelled absurdly. She lowered her head and took small bites while occasionally glancing sideways at the strange town boy. Her eyes were long and narrow like peach blossoms, their outer corners slightly raised. They gave her the natural appearance of a very young fox spirit. Her look seemed to say, "Whatever you came here to do, go ahead and do it." Chen Ping'an looked helpless. He pointed toward the water beyond the stone slope and called, I'm not just passing through. I need to go into the stream over there. The girl stared at him. She said nothing. Chen Ping'an quickly took a stone from his basket. I'm going into the water to collect stones like this. The girl suddenly seemed to remember something important. She raised one finger to her lips and signaled for him not to speak. Then she shifted to one side, clearly making room so he could pass. Chen Ping'an bent down, lifted his basket and walked across. Fortunately, the stone slope was broad enough for more than 10 people to stand upon. The girl had moved all the way to the edge. She no longer sat with her legs stretched out. Instead, she sat properly cross-legged. A small food bag rested on her knees. It was piled so high with food that it resembled a little mountain. Up to this point, she had only eaten away the summit. Chen Ping'an took off his straw sandals and set down both baskets. Originally, since it was the middle of the night, he had planned to strip off his shirt before diving. Now he changed his mind. There was an unfamiliar young maiden beside him. Even if she did not scream, if her elders later saw or heard that he had stripped half-naked beside her, Chen Ping'an figured they could break both his legs and he would have no right to complain. So he kept his clothes on. Then he stepped to the edge and dove. He swam straight toward the deepest part. Very quickly, he found a palm-sized stone. Unfortunately, it was not a Snake Gall Stone. He surfaced, wiped his face, then dove again. After 3 attempts, he finally found a blue-black Snake Gall Stone. Soaked from head to toe, Chen Ping'an climbed onto the rock, placed it into the basket, and immediately returned to the water. From beginning to end, the girl kept her back turned toward him and remained busy eating. In less than half an hour, Chen Ping'an collected 7 or 8 stones. Other than the first, whose color was slightly dull, the rest were beautiful. On one later dive, he did not return with a stone. Instead, he caught a live fish the size of his palm. The townspeople called it a stone fish. Whenever one sensed people, it liked to hide beneath rocks. Its meat was delicious. Most were only finger-sized. One as large as the fish in Chen Ping'an's hand was extremely rare. Earlier, he had already felt several hiding beneath crevices, but he had released them because he was focused on stones. Now a thought suddenly came to him. If he could catch a few tonight, he could make fish soup for Miss Ning tomorrow. That would be good for her recovery. When Chen Ping'an climbed ashore, he casually dropped the fish into the small bamboo basket. The second time he came up with a fish, he suddenly discovered that the green-clad girl had crouched beside the basket. She was staring intensely at the first fish. Her face practically glowed. The expression was exactly the same as Jigui's when she had stared at that giant Snake Gall Stone years ago. Chen Ping'an dropped the second fish into the basket. The girl slowly raised her head, but he had already turned away. With quick steps, he returned to the stream and dove again. The moment she heard the splash, the girl snatched one of the fish from the basket. She lowered her head and watched it jump in her hands. Her expression became solemn. She nodded. Impressive. Impressive. The green-clad girl knew that this town held many strange sights. There was the well in Apricot Blossom Alley, where no one knew how long the chain truly was. There was the covered bridge nearby, which had once been an ancient stone arch bridge, spanning the stream for 3,000 years. A rust-covered iron sword stood upon it, point aimed downward toward a deep emerald pool, whose bottom could not be seen. There was also the ruined shrine, 12 paces long and 12 paces wide, overgrown with weeds and broken almost beyond recognition. Farther north lay Porcelain Mountain, piled with rejected imperial ware personally marked as defective by generations of kiln supervisors and then smashed to pieces, and many other things besides. She even knew the reasons behind more than half of them. She had followed her father across the world since childhood. Very little was truly new to her. Yet when Chen Ping'an came ashore with a third fish, the girl's hands were empty again. She still crouched beside the basket. Only now she was secretly wiping both hands against the corner of her robe. She raised her head and looked at the barefoot boy approaching. Her eyes resembled those of ordinary people staring at an immortal. Chen Ping'an felt uncomfortable beneath that strange gaze. He cautiously asked, "Do you want these fish?" The girl nodded fiercely without thinking. Chen Ping'an smiled. "Then these 3 are yours. I can catch more later." The girl's eyes widened. Then she smiled in complete satisfaction. A little fox spirit displaying all its charm. Chen Ping'an knew that look well. It reminded him of the way he had looked at Liu Xianyang when they were younger. Back then, Liu Xianyang had been the king of the children in Apricot Blossom Alley and Mud Bottle Alley. Catching snakes, trapping birds, fishing. It had seemed there was nothing in the world he could not do. Later, the children who had once followed Liu Xianyang everywhere gradually went their separate ways. Some became apprentices at the dragon kilns, some worked in town shops, some helped relatives keep accounts, and some, as Song Jixin liked to say, had so little promise that they could only go into the fields and dig food from the earth. In the end, the only person still following Liu Xianyang was Chen Ping'an. Chen Ping'an threaded the 3 fish together with several blades of grass and handed them to the girl. She accepted the string. It felt rather light, not really enough to make a full dish. She tilted her head and glanced toward the stream again, her eyes full of expectation. Chen Ping'an immediately understood. He said apologetically, "The next fish are for soup. My friend is injured and needs them to strengthen her body, so I can't give those away." The girl pointed at the bag of pastries nearby. Clearly, she was offering to trade. Chen Ping'an smiled and shook his head. "No, pastries taste good and fill your stomach, but they aren't as nourishing as fish soup." The girl nodded. She did not insist. Silently, she returned to her previous seat, carefully placed the fish beside her feet, and resumed the grand undertaking of eating her mountain into nothing. Chen Ping'an was curious about her, but he did not pry. Judging by her clothing, she did not look like one of the pampered young ladies from Fortune Street or Peach Leaf Alley. She seemed more like Zhigui next door, clean and delicate, quiet too. Then Chen Ping'an suddenly became worried. Could she be a little maid who had stolen food from some wealthy household? He had heard that the rules in great families were terrifying. Liu Xianyang and Song Jishin both loved causing trouble, but on this subject they oddly disagreed. Liu Xianyang's version was frightening. According to him, if a maid from a great household took even one wrong step, the steward might order servants to break her legs and throw her outside the wall to wait for death. Song Jixin said Liu Xianyang had heard too many ridiculous rumors. Things were not that exaggerated. Still, he admitted that maids in grand residences truly did walk as lightly as cats, without making half a sound. At the time, Liu Xianyang caught sight of Jigui secretly smiling nearby. He immediately became embarrassed and shouted at Song Jixin, "What are you talking about? Even that goose in your house can talk better than you." Eventually, Chen Ping'an caught another 7 or 8 fish. They made the bamboo basket sway and jump. By then, his face had gone pale. He had reached his limit. The cold spring water had seeped deep into his body. The main problem, of course, was his injured left hand. After climbing ashore for the last time, Chen Ping'an quickly went down the stone slope and disappeared into the grass. Rustling sounds followed. Soon he returned with 3 or 4 herbs, several still covered in mud. He picked up an ordinary stone. Back on the broad rock, he found a small hollow about the size of a palm. He wiped the herbs clean, placed them inside, and gently crushed them. Before long, they became a green paste carrying the fresh scent of spring grass. With his back to the girl, Chen Ping'an took a deep breath. He clenched his teeth and began unwinding the cotton strips from his left hand. Sweat quickly formed across his forehead. Within moments, his hairline was soaked. The wound was a mess of torn flesh. Although the exposed bone had improved somewhat after being wrapped earlier, the injury was still horrifying to look at. Chen Ping'an had not expected his left hand to enter the water tonight, so he had brought no spare bandages. Earlier, his mind had been filled with only 2 thoughts. Snake Gall Stones could make money, and fish could become soup. Only now did he realize what a serious mistake he had made. The boy sat there blankly. Then suddenly, a hand appeared before him, holding several strips of clean cloth. At some point, the green-clad girl had torn part of her sleeve. Chen Ping'an gave her a pained smile. There was no room left for politeness. He applied the herbal paste to his palm, brought the cloth to his mouth, bit down on one end, then pulled hard with his right hand and wrapped the bandage twice around his palm. His movements were orderly and swift. The strips fluttered like butterfly wings. When he finished, he slowly raised his right hand to wipe away the sweat. Both hands were trembling uncontrollably. The green-clad girl crouched beside him. She gave Chen Ping'an a thumbs up. Her face clearly said, "You're impressive." Chen Ping'an pointed toward his eyes with his right hand and smiled bitterly. "Actually, it hurts so badly I'm crying." The girl turned and looked at his large stone basket and the fish basket beside it. She seemed confused. Chen Ping'an looked embarrassed. These stones can earn money. And catching fish is important too. The girl only half understood. Still, she remained silent. Her gaze drifted away. She turned and stared blankly toward the stream. The scattered stones beneath the water suddenly trembled in waves. At that moment, starlight filled the sky. Heaven and earth were silent. It seemed as though the entire mortal world contained only one boy and one girl. Chen Ping'an's body gradually steadied. His earlier rapid breathing slowed without him noticing. Little by little, it became calm and even, as though a mountain stream that had suddenly flooded was transforming into a steady river, flowing through spring and autumn. The change happened silently. Chen Ping'an did not notice it at all. It came naturally, as smoothly as water following its course. He knew that with his clothes soaked through, he could not remain in the cold early spring wind for long. He needed to return to town and change quickly. Chen Ping'an had never studied medicine from books, but illness was one of the things he feared most in life. Over the years, he had developed an almost instinctive understanding of seasonal changes and how his body reacted to them. So he quickly put on his straw sandals. He tied the fish basket at his waist. He lifted the heavy basket of stones onto his back. Then he waved at the green-clad girl. "I'm going now. You should head home early too." He had barely stepped down from the rock when he turned back again. The water near the covered bridge is especially deep. Be very careful not to slip. When you go home, it would be safer to walk closer to the rice fields. Even if you fall and end up covered in mud, that's better than falling into the stream. Halfway through, Chen Ping'an suddenly realized that his words sounded ominous. They did not sound like helpful advice at all. They sounded more like the shameless, curse-like warnings Gukan's mother was so skilled at delivering. Chen Ping'an immediately shut his mouth. He stopped nagging, quickened his pace, and ran back toward town. The basket was extremely heavy, but the straw-sandaled boy was unusually happy. After finally untying a knot in his heart that had almost become impossible to resolve, Chen Ping'an felt for the first time that he truly ought to live well. For example, he needed money. Money to buy Spring Festival couplets with that special fragrance. Money to buy brightly painted door gods. Enough to repay Auntie Mao for those meat buns. Perhaps even enough to buy an ox. Or raise a whole flock of chickens like Song Jiksen next door. The green-clad girl remained where she was, diligently eating away at her food. Her expression was extraordinarily serious. Every new pastry she picked up looked as though it were a mortal enemy she had to defeat. Just as she was locked in battle with one particular cake, her entire body suddenly stiffened. She realized something had gone terribly wrong. Her first reaction was not to run. Instead, she opened her mouth wide, stuffed more than half the pastry inside, clapped the crumbs from her hands, and then sat upright with her arms folded. At some unknown moment, a man had appeared nearby. He was not tall, but his build gave an impression of tremendous solidity. No one would mistake him for an ordinary village farmer. His eyes were far too sharp, so bright and forceful that most people would not dare meet them directly. The man looked at the food bag. Only the foot of the mountain remained. His expression turned helpless. He wanted to scold his daughter, but he could not bring himself to do it. He silently looked at her stubborn posture, the look of a child who knew she had done wrong and was prepared to accept punishment. The more he looked, the softer his heart became. Somehow he started feeling as though he were the one who had done something wrong. He wanted to say something to ease the atmosphere. Something like, "If you're hungry, just eat the food in the thatched hut. If you finish it, father can go into town tomorrow and buy more." But the man was naturally reserved. When the words reached his lips, they became as heavy as mountains and pressed against his tongue. He simply did not know how to comfort his own daughter. At that moment, he felt less capable than the straw-sandaled boy. At least around Chen Ping'an, his daughter had not looked this nervous. The green-clad girl suddenly raised her head. "Father, why didn't you accept him as an apprentice that day?" The fact that she had spoken first relieved the man enormously. He frowned, then simply sat down beside her. "That boy has an excellent temperament, but his foundation is too poor. Even if father accepted him, his fellow disciples would gradually leave him farther and farther behind. No matter how hard he worked, he would only be forced to watch that gap grow. And if another senior brother Liu appeared someday, why put him through that?" The green-clad girl's expression dimmed. It was unclear whether she was saddened by the words senior brother Liu or by the thought of the straw-sandaled boy. The man hesitated. Then he decided not to hide anything. Better that she understood than accidentally walked into trouble or disrupted the sage's plans. "There's something else. That boy is too ordinary. Inside this town that actually makes him unusual. Sure, you probably don't know that his life-bound porcelain was shattered long ago. So he is almost like a wandering ghost without ancestral shelter. At the same time, strange things gather around him, things difficult for ordinary people to notice. That is also why Song Jiksen and that girl chose to live beside him. Otherwise, with Song Jiksen's status, do you really think he couldn't live on Fortune Street?" "Of course he could," the girl thought carefully. "Father means he's a little like bait?" The man rubbed her head, more or less. Then he smiled. "If the two of us weren't sword cultivators who care little for external treasures, opportunities, and accumulated fortune, perhaps father would have kept him close too, just to see whether some benefit might fall to you." The green-clad girl became even more depressed. Her mood had clearly worsened. The man sighed. "Sure, father's words are sometimes unpleasant. Don't take them to heart." She still looked sickly and listless. The man thought for a moment. Then he pointed toward the distant covered bridge. The construction of that bridge was one of the Great Li Dynasty's grandest works. They poured enormous effort into it for one reason alone. That inconspicuous rusted sword in town. Think about it. An ownerless sword whose primordial spirit is broken and almost completely faded. 3,000 years have passed. Yet merely to suppress the little bit of power still remaining within it, an entire dynasty had to invest that much effort. And all they seek is to let it rest quietly for a while longer. The girl gave a small "oh." Her eyes slipped toward the food bag at her feet. Without much attention, she replied, "Impressive, impressive." The man did not know whether to laugh or cry. He rubbed his forehead. Heaven is vast, earth is vast, food is greatest of all. But the girl's mother had never been like this. So who exactly had their daughter inherited this appetite from? The man patted his daughter's shoulder and said gently, "Father is going to meet someone. You stay here and play. Eat slowly. No one is going to steal it from you." The girl suddenly looked up and grabbed his arm. Around her wrist was a deep crimson bracelet, brilliant as fire, shaped like a flood dragon biting its own tail. It looked like a living flame wrapped around the girl's wrist. The man's face brightened. "So you do still have a little conscience. All right, don't worry. Father is only going to meet Master Qi." The girl released him, then immediately picked up another pastry and resumed battle. The man's anger had nowhere to go. He had endured all the way until now. At last he muttered, "Eat, eat, eat." That Liu brat deserved the beating, but he wasn't entirely wrong either. One day you really are going to eat yourself into a little fat woman. Who will dare marry you then? Will father have to go out and kidnap a son-in-law? The girl froze. She held the pastry with both hands. Tears instantly gathered in her eyes. The man fled as though escaping for his life. With his back turned to his daughter, he slapped himself once across the face. Every time. Every single time. He endured so much and still failed at the final step. Ice well past midnight, Chen Ping'an finally returned to Liu Xianyang's house. As he unlocked the door, he could already hear Liu Xianyang snoring like thunder. What a fearless heart. If their positions were reversed, Chen Ping'an knew he would never be able to sleep tonight. He first carried the basket of stones and the fish basket into the kitchen. Then he went to the room on the right, the one Liu Xianyang had cleared out for him, and quickly changed into dry clothes. Only after that did he return to the kitchen and begin cleaning the fish. He slit them open, removed the innards, washed them carefully, and placed them on a plate. Then he covered them with another plate, so flies could not get to them in the morning. From the basket of Snake Gall Stones, Chen Ping'an selected the 5 most eye-catching pieces and carried them into the room where he would sleep. Before leaving, he glanced at Miss Ning's long sword resting on top of the cabinet. It still lay there quietly. Once everything was done, Chen Ping'an finally crawled beneath the blanket. She slowly warmed. But his eyes remained wide open, partly because his left hand hurt, partly because he simply was not sleepy. But the true reason was that, unlike Liu Xianyang, Chen Ping'an now understood what it meant when people refused to reason with you. He did not dare sleep. So Chen Ping'an remained awake throughout the entire night. From beginning to end, part of his attention stayed fixed on the courtyard gate and the door to the room. Near dawn, he finally rose and went to the kitchen. He lit the stove and started boiling water. Then he prepared to go to Iron Lock Well in Apricot Blossom Alley and carry back 2 buckets. Liu Xianyang was still half asleep beneath the blankets with only his head visible. Hearing the faint sounds outside, he called drowsily, "Chen Ping'an, why are you up so early? What are you doing?" Chen Ping'an answered irritably, "Boiling water." Liu Xianyang called again, "If you run into Jigui, say hello for me." Chen Ping'an ignored him. He was about to leave the courtyard when Liu Xianyang suddenly added, "Chen Ping'an, if you help me out, then when you come back I'll go wade through the stream and collect stones with you." Chen Ping'an immediately smiled brilliantly. "Deal." Liu Xianyang opened his eyes, then pulled even his head beneath the blanket. He muttered, "No loyalty at all. I knew this was the only trick that would work." On the stone steps of the covered bridge, a middle-aged Confucian scholar sat alone, waiting for dawn. When the first light of morning appeared, he raised his head and smiled softly. "A chamber dark for 1,000 years. One lamp, and it is bright." Chen Ping'an carried his shoulder pole toward Iron Lock Well. On the way, he passed several breakfast stalls in Apricot Blossom Alley. The smell instantly made his stomach ache with hunger. Unfortunately, he had no money in his pocket, so the boy could only endure it and line up for water. 3 households stood ahead of him. When his turn finally came, Jigui arrived carrying a small bucket and slipped directly into line beside him. The people behind immediately showed their displeasure. No one openly cursed, but the words they muttered were hardly pleasant. Among them was a hunchbacked old woman everyone called Granny Ma. Both of her sons had done well for themselves. Each owned a dragon kiln. Their kilns were small and ranked near the bottom among the town's 30-odd dragon kilns, but in Apricot Blossom Alley, that still counted as towering wealth. For some unknown reason, Granny Ma did not get along with either daughter-in-law. Her sons and their wives had long since moved to Peach Leaf Alley. The old woman remained alone in the ancestral house in Apricot Blossom Alley. To children of Chen Ping'an and Liu Xianyang's generation, Granny Ma had always been a terrifying elder. Her curses were vicious. Her stinginess was legendary. In winter, she practically wanted to sweep every flake of snow outside into her own home. If children playing snowball fights took snow from in front of her house or broke icicles from beneath her eaves, she would chase them several streets with a broom while screaming abuse. In the western alleys, perhaps the only person who had ever truly suppressed Granny Ma's arrogance was Gu Kan's mother. Now Widow Gu had left with distant relatives of her late husband to return to his ancestral homeland. Granny Ma, who had become slightly more restrained over the past few years, immediately sprang back to life and returned to the battlefield. No one pleased her eyes anymore. The instant Song Jisen's maid appeared, Granny Ma began speaking in that strange, poisonous tone of hers. Her voice was not loud. She smiled without warmth and deliberately leaned toward another woman nearby. She started gossiping about some girl who had finally begun arranging her hair as a married woman, whose legs would not stay properly closed when she walked. What wonderful news! Now she would no longer have to remain some servant bearing children in her mistress's place. She could finally be openly called Madam. Chen Ping'an's scalp tingled just listening to it. But he could hardly chase Jigui away simply because she had cut into his place. They had been neighbors for years. So after filling Liu Xianyang's 2 buckets, Chen Ping'an quickly helped fill one for Jigui as well. He only wanted to escape the quarrelsome women as quickly as possible. Granny Ma became even angrier when she saw the little Song family maid pretending not to hear her. This was the problem when experts exchanged blows. The worst thing was an opponent who refused to accept the challenge at all. You could possess a lifetime of martial skill and still have nowhere to strike. In the past, Granny Ma had often traded insults with that fox Widow Gu. Even when she lost, she always felt her skill had improved. Next time, surely she would recover her dignity. Jigui was different. Again and again, the girl simply refused to answer. Yet each time she left, her eyes seemed to carry some meaning that made the old woman deeply uncomfortable. That silent look made Granny Ma's teeth itch with hatred. Sometimes she wanted to rush over and claw that pretty face to pieces. Better that than watch every teenage boy and young man in the nearby alleys dream of wrapping their arms around the waist of that shameless little maid. Her own grandson was the worst. Other people still thought him a fool. But recently even Granny Ma understood that the boy had become completely infatuated. He talked nonsense all day. When he was lucid, he claimed he would marry Jigui and then punch a hole straight through heaven itself. Seeing that the hateful girl still did not react, Granny Ma turned her venom toward the impoverished boy beside her. What a useless lump of mud. You killed your own parents and still have the face to keep living. You know you're destined to be too worthless to marry, so now you shamelessly fool around with somebody else's maid? What a perfectly matched pair of dogs. Why don't you just get together? Mud Bottle Alley is nothing but a nest for trash anyway. Maybe when you have children, they really will become kings and tyrants of Mud Bottle Alley. Chen Ping'an thought for a moment. Then he turned and started lowering the shoulder pole from his back. But Jigui had already set down her bucket. She walked toward Granny Ma. Without saying a word, the girl slapped her. The blow spun Granny Ma around. Only the women beside her kept her from falling. Before the old woman could recover, Jigui stepped forward and slapped her again. You old corpse who refuses to die. I've tolerated you long enough. Granny Ma shook her head, furious. She tried to strike back. Perhaps it was only an illusion, but the 2 women supporting her suddenly seemed almost too diligent, holding her so firmly that she could not pull free. So Granny Ma suffered a third attack. This time Jigui bent one finger and struck her sharply in the forehead. If you dare curse people again, I'll pull out your tongue. For every filthy word you say, I'll stab you once with a needle. Granny Ma was so frightened that she forgot to curse back, let alone fight. Jigui turned and walked away. Then she saw that the boy next door had already picked up her bucket for her. She smiled. Together they headed back toward Mud Bottle Alley. Before Chen Ping'an could speak, Jigui said, "Thank you. And me cursing her had nothing to do with you." Chen Ping'an had no idea how to answer. Back beside the wheel at Iron Lock Well, Granny Ma sat on the ground and howled dryly. That damned little whore will be punished by heaven. My life is so bitter. Heaven has no eyes. Why doesn't lightning come down and strike that slut dead? Jigui continued walking with light steps. Slowly she raised both hands toward the sky in an extremely strange posture. Fortunately, Chen Ping'an had been her neighbor for years. He thought nothing of it. As they passed a breakfast stall, Chen Ping'an saw a familiar figure. She was not tall and wore green clothes. The girl from last night was buying freshly steamed meat buns. The rich aroma drifted through the entire street. At some point that morning, thick clouds had sunk low over the town. They looked like an enormous quilt from some wealthy household spread across the sky to air in the sun. Rumble. Thunder suddenly rolled above the town. Granny Ma, still beside Iron Lock Well, immediately scrambled to her feet and hurried home. The small bucket in her hand swung wildly, spilling water everywhere. By the time she reached home, she would probably have less than half remaining. Perhaps the old woman knew perfectly well that if heaven truly had eyes, the person most likely to be struck by lightning was herself. Chen Ping'an heard the thunder and looked upward. He frowned slightly. It did not feel like rain. Zhigui smiled. My young master says he once read in a book that whenever spring first arrives, righteous gods of the heavenly court appear in golden armor and beat drums across the sky. They send away the old and welcome the new, frighten 10,000 evils and announce the coming of spring. Chen Ping'an nodded. Your young master really has read a lot. Zhigui sighed. My young master is good at almost everything. He's just a little lazy, and he likes cursing old heaven. I don't think that's good. Chen Ping'an had no habit of criticizing people behind their backs, so he said nothing. Song Jixin next door did have a strange temperament. Like Granny Ma, he enjoyed cursing heaven for having no eyes. But scholars had their own refinement. Song Jixin only cursed during snowy nights, thunderstorms, or whenever strange lights filled the horizon. He said one should curse while old heaven was distracted or dozing. Then heaven would not hear and would not become angry. Song Jixin could still vent all his frustration. 2 gains with 1 move. Seeing Chen Ping'an refuse to answer, Zhigui asked in an intentionally casual voice, You didn't come home last night. Were you staying at Liu Xianyang's? Chen Ping'an nodded. There's a guest in my house. It wasn't convenient. Zhigui suddenly asked. By the way, did Master Qi meet with you? What did he say? Chen Ping'an returned the question. Why are you asking? She smiled with complete innocence. Just curious. This morning when I came out for water, I happened to meet Master Qi taking a morning walk. He asked whether you were home. I answered honestly. Chen Ping'an smiled. I happened to meet Master Qi earlier. He chatted with me for a while. Mostly he said that back then, I should have gone to the village school with Liu Xianyang. I could only tell him my family was too poor. Otherwise, I would have wanted to study too. Zhigui looked doubtful. That's all? Chen Ping'an met her eyes. He smiled. What else did you think it would be? Zhigui smiled and let the matter drop. They separated at a street corner. Zhigui took her bucket and headed toward Mud Bottle Alley. Chen Ping'an returned toward Liu Xianyang's house. After that, he still had to go to the eastern gate and collect household letters for delivery. 1 copper coin per letter. If this work had existed earlier, then with Chen Ping'an's legs capable of running over every mountain within a 100-li radius, he might already have earned enough money to marry. At the entrance to Mud Bottle Alley, Zhigui saw her young master standing there yawning. She hurried over. Young master, why did you come out? Song Jixin slowly stretched. Got bored sitting at home. Zhigui lowered her voice. When will the new kiln supervisor return to town? Does that mean we'll be able to go to the capital afterward? Song Jixin thought for a moment. Probably within a week. Zhigui hesitated. Even the water in her bucket swayed. Song Jixin smiled. What? Something on your mind? She spoke timidly. Young master, could I borrow that local county gazetteer? Only for 1 or 2 nights. I want to learn a few characters so that when we reach the capital, people won't look down on me. If that happened, young master might be mocked because of me. Song Jixin laughed. After thinking briefly, he nodded. Fine, but remember to wash your hands before reading. Don't stain the pages. And be careful not to drip candle wax on it. Nothing else matters. It's only that rotten little book called Stop Here Anyway. Zhigui smiled brightly. This servant thanks young master. Song Jixin was delighted. He laughed freely. Come, come, let your young master carry the water for you. Zhigui immediately stepped aside. Her expression turned serious. Young master, don't gentlemen keep away from the kitchen? How could you touch work like this? If word spreads, people will curse me. Song Jixin laughed from exasperation. Rules, principles, ritual law, those things are useful for frightening other people. But your young master. At that point, the scholarly seedling raised in a narrow alley stopped speaking. Zhigui asked curiously, what about my young master? Song Jixin returned to his careless manner. He pointed at his own nose. Your young master is actually just a farmer. I clear the soil so other people can plant seeds and grow crops. Then I sit there waiting for harvest, year after year, that's all. Zhigui looked completely confused. Song Jixin laughed. Then the boy abruptly stopped. His expression became solemn. Zhigui, did that Chen fellow help carry your water? The maid nodded innocently. Song Jixin said with deep seriousness. A sage once said that when a stranger offers you even the smallest kindness, you should treasure it like a rare jewel. But everything given by people close to you is treated as natural and proper. To ignore that difference is wrong. Zhigui looked even more confused. Huh? Song Jixin rubbed his chin and muttered. She didn't even hear the hidden meaning. How is this young master supposed to continue? When we reach the capital, do I really need to trade you for some clever little maid who's prettier, quicker, and knows how to understand her master's heart? Zhigui could no longer suppress her laughter. She clearly did not take the threat seriously. She exposed him immediately. Young master was really waiting for me to ask which great sage said those profound words, right? Young master, I know. It was you. Song Jishin laughed loudly. The one who understands me is Jigui. Inside the village school's study, the middle-aged Confucian scholar sat upright. When the spring thunder sounded, every black and white chest piece on the board before him turned to fine powder. Children in the town had a particular way of catching fish in the stream. They would hold an iron hammer and strike the rocks along the creek bed. Fish hiding beneath the stones would be stunned by the vibration and float to the surface. It worked much like the saying in books, "Strike the mountain to frighten the tiger." Chen Ping'an carried the water back to Liu Xianyang's courtyard and poured it into the kitchen vat. Then he went to the bedroom door and called, "Liu Xianyang, can I use some of your salt, oil, and firewood to make fish soup for Miss Ning?" Liu Xianyang had been sleeping beautifully. Being awakened sent him into a rage. "Chen, you're unbelievably annoying. I was just dreaming that Jigui smiled at me." "Give my Jigui back," Chen Ping'an shook his head. Then he remembered something and apologized. "I actually ran into Jigui at Iron Lock Well just now, but Granny Ma caused trouble, so I forgot to say anything for you. When I take the fish soup to Miss Ning later, I promise I'll say a few good words." Liu Xianyang shot upright. He dressed, ran to the doorway, sat down, and watched Chen Ping'an moving around the kitchen. He chuckled. "I'll come deliver the fish soup with you. By the way, what was Jigui wearing today? That pomegranate red skirt? Or the pale green? Once I save up 200 copper coins, I can buy her that box of face powder made from more than 100 ground dragon silver coins. I know she's wanted it for ages. She just hates spending the money. It's all because of that poor miser Song Jixin. He dresses himself like some young master from Fortune Street. But poor Jigui goes the whole year without getting more than a few new things. If I were her young master, I'd let her buy whatever she wanted. She'd live even better than the rich young ladies of Fortune Street. A real lady worth 10,000 gold." Chen Ping'an ignored Liu Xianyang's foolish dreams. He genuinely did not understand why his friend liked Jigui so much. It was not because he looked down on her for being Song Jishin's maid, nor did he think she was ugly. He simply felt that no matter how he looked at Liu Xianyang and Jigui, the two of them did not seem destined for marriage. Chen Ping'an asked curiously, "Why do you call her Jigui too instead of Wang Zhu?" Liu Xianyang grinned. "Once I found out you don't know how to write the two characters in Jigui either, I stopped caring." Chen Ping'an sighed helplessly. "You really are more useful than me. But compared with Song Jixin, she isn't my maid either." Liu Xianyang sneered. "That fellow isn't better than you in everything. For example, has he ever called anyone father or mother in his entire life? No. Doesn't that mean he's worse than you, Chen Ping'an? And you can't entirely blame Gukan's mother or vicious-tongued Granny Ma for gossiping. There really is something unclear about Song Jixin's background. Otherwise, why wouldn't he openly live inside the kiln supervisor's official residence? Why run to your mud bottle alley and suffer? He also loves looking down on people, so he deserves to be cursed." Chen Ping'an stood and walked to the kitchen doorway. "Liu Xianyang, Song Jixin and I aren't really friends at all, but saying things like that about someone..." Liu Xianyang hurriedly raised both hands. He refused to let Chen Ping'an continue. Fine, I won't say it anymore." "Happy? Where did you even get that rotten habit of lecturing people? My grandfather once said neither of your parents was especially good at talking. Especially your mother. She always spoke softly and shyly, and she liked to smile. Her temperament was genuinely gentle. My grandfather also," said Granny Ma cursed practically everyone living near the alley back then. "But when she met your mother, not only did she never pick a fight, she actually smiled." Chen Ping'an broke into a broad grin. Liu Xianyang waved him away. "Go make soup for your little wife." Chen Ping'an glared. "If you have the courage, say that in front of Miss Ning." Liu Xianyang laughed. "You may be stupid, but I'm not." A while later, Chen Ping'an brought out a small porcelain jar. The two boys locked Liu Xianyang's house securely and headed together toward Mud Bottle Alley. When they reached Chen Ping'an's house, Liu Xianyang saw him standing outside obediently knocking on his own door. Only then did he realize Chen Ping'an had even left the house key with the girl in black. Liu Xianyang decided his friend was completely beyond saving. Ning Yao did not wear her veiled hat while inside the house. When she opened the door, her beautiful face was uncovered. Liu Xianyang was strangely afraid of this serious young woman. Even he did not fully understand why. If it was because of her cold personality, then she was at least as distant as Jigui next door. Yet Liu Xianyang did not dare become shameless around her. If it was because she carried a saber and sword, that explanation did not quite work either. The wealthy young masters of Fortune Street had surrounded and chased Liu Xianyang more than once. He had fled from them like a homeless dog. But deep inside, he had never truly feared them. This foreign girl was different. He really was afraid of her. Ning Yao sat at the table and opened the jar. The aroma rose immediately. Her long, narrow eyes softened slightly. She nodded and said gently, "Thank you." Chen Ping'an watched carefully. He knew this was what it looked like when the usually cold girl was in a very good mood. He first helped her start a pot of porridge and told her to watch the heat. Then he turned to Liu Xianyang. "You're staying here to wait for Jigui to come out? I need to deliver letters." Liu Xianyang sat in the doorway with his ears pricked toward the neighboring courtyard, terrified he might somehow miss the sound of an immortal battle. His mood was poor. "Go do your own work!" Chen Ping'an left the house. As he approached the entrance to Mud Bottle Alley, his view suddenly darkened. He looked up. A tall man in white stood before him. One hand was clasped behind his back. The other rested against the white jade belt across his waist. His gaze was directed into the distance. Perhaps realizing he had blocked the narrow alley, the man smiled. He turned sideways and voluntarily made room for Chen Ping'an to pass. Chen Ping'an was full of questions. He hurried out of Mud Bottle Alley. Then he glanced back. The man in white was already walking slowly deeper inside. Though Chen Ping'an had only caught a brief glimpse, he had noticed that the man's spotless white robe was embroidered with golden thread at both chest and back. The two designs resembled living creatures circling through clouds. It was extraordinarily strange. Chen Ping'an did not think much about it. He assumed the man was another outsider, like Fu Nanhua, who had come to Mud Bottle Alley searching for an opportunity. After walking with Master Qi beneath the old scholar tree that day, the straw-sandaled boy no longer worried as much as before. He always felt that as long as Master Qi remained in town, then even if something terrible truly happened, at the very least someone would still be willing to give ordinary people justice. When Chen Ping'an jogged through Apricot Blossom Alley, he saw the green-clad girl from last night again. She was sitting at a wonton stall. One chopstick stood upright beneath her hand as she tapped it lightly against the table. Her round, innocent face was practically shining. Every ounce of her attention was fixed on the wontons cooking in the hot pot. She did not notice Chen Ping'an at all, though he passed only 5 or 6 paces away. For the green-clad girl, when delicious food stood before her, even if heaven itself collapsed, she would finish eating first and run afterward. Chen Ping'an felt genuine admiration for this strange girl. He did not disturb her. He smiled and continued running toward the eastern side of town. Some people and some things were only scenery along the road. Yet, seeing them even once could still make the world feel beautiful. When Chen Ping'an reached the eastern gate, the scruffy gatekeeper was standing beside his stump on tiptoe, staring eastward as though waiting for someone important. Chen Ping'an had previously heard old men gossiping beneath the scholar tree about the day the current kiln supervisor first entered town. Apparently, the reception had been grand enough to mobilize nearly every elder from the 4 great surnames and 10 major clans. They all waited at the eastern gate to receive His Excellency. They stood for hours beneath the blazing sun. At last, a steward from the government residence came running over in a panic. He announced that the kiln supervisor had just awakened from an afternoon nap in the rear courtyard and told everyone to go directly to the government residence if they wanted to meet him. The wealthy old masters were reportedly so furious that smoke nearly came from their heads. Yet once they actually entered the government residence, not one dared so much as fart. Every one of them behaved like obedient grandchildren. Chen Ping'an had always found the old men beneath the scholar tree strange. The way they talked, one might think they had personally witnessed everything. Whenever they discussed scandals from Fortune Street or Peach Leaf Alley, their stories somehow sounded more accurate than the truth itself. They would talk, for example, about the Liu family's second concubine having an affair with the household martial instructor. When someone broke down the door, they claimed to know even how much of her large chest she had managed to cover with the clothing she grabbed in panic. The storyteller sounded as though he had personally been the martial instructor hiding in the room. Every time Liu Xianyang listened, he swallowed repeatedly. Song Jishin sometimes joined them too, though he never brought Jigui. His laughter was more restrained than Liu Xianyang's. But when everyone began whispering among themselves, Song Jishin's voice became louder than when he recited the classics every morning and evening. Chen Ping'an crouched beside the stump and patiently waited for the gatekeeper. The man cursed a few times, jumped down, and went into the yellow earth hut. He returned carrying a stack of letters, 6 household letters, but he offered only 5 copper coins, 1 coin per delivery. Chen Ping'an glanced over the addresses and said nothing. 2 of the letters were for neighboring households on Fortune Street. He did not intend to take advantage by demanding an extra coin for almost no additional distance. Of course, if the gatekeeper suddenly discovered kindness in his heart and offered 6 coins from the beginning, Chen Ping'an would absolutely not refuse. After planning the order of his route, Chen Ping'an casually asked, "Waiting for someone?" The gatekeeper glanced toward the eastern road and snorted. "Waiting for a big shot!" Chen Ping'an had no desire to remain and become the man's target for irritation. He hurried away. The gatekeeper laughed and cursed after him. Well, look at that. The brat does have some sense. He raised his eyes toward the sky. The thunder had long since faded. The low clouds that had earlier seemed ready to press down upon the rooftops were gradually dispersing. The gatekeeper dropped himself against the stump and sighed. When immortals fight, mortals suffer. Of the 6 letters, one went to each of the 4 great surnames Li, Zhao Song, and Luan Fortune Street. The remaining 2 were for Peachleaf Alley. One of those happened to be for the same kindly old man as before. By another coincidence, the old man himself opened the door again. The instant he saw Chen Ping'an, he recognized the straw-sandaled courier and teased him. "Boy, still won't come inside for a drink of water?" Chen Ping'an smiled shyly and shook his head. The old man was not surprised. He pulled a coin from his sleeve and offered it to him. Then he laughed and explained. "Something good happened in the family today. Everyone who comes by gets a little share of the luck. It's only meant for good fortune. Not much. A little over 10 copper coins in total. So take this one without worrying." Only then did Chen Ping'an accept it. He smiled. "Thank you, Grandpa Wei." The old man nodded. Then he suddenly said, "Boy, when you have time these next few days, go sit beneath the old scholar tree. If you see any scholar tree leaves or branches, bring some home. They can keep ants and centipedes away. Very useful. And they cost nothing." Standing below the steps, Chen Ping'an bowed his head and thanked the elder. The old man smiled. "Go on. The year's work begins in spring. A young person should move their muscles more. That can only be good." The boy left along the green stone road of Peachleaf Alley. The old man remained standing before his door. He looked toward the peach trees lining both sides of the lane. A young maid with a graceful figure walked up beside him. "Old ancestor, what are you looking at? It's cold outside. Don't catch a chill." She had served the old man for several years. She knew her ancestor possessed a bodhisattva-like heart. So although she respected him, she was not afraid of him. She smiled naturally. "Old ancestor, you aren't remembering some girl you met when you were young, are you? Did she stand beneath a peach tree too?" The white-haired old man laughed. "Tao, both you and that letter delivery boy are people with attentive hearts." The maid brightened at the praise. Her smile was innocent. Then the old man suddenly said, "In a few days, some distant relatives will come visit. When they arrive, Tao, you'll leave the town with the younger members of the family." The maid froze. Her eyes immediately reddened. She began to sob. "Old ancestor, I don't want to leave this place." The old man, who always spoke gently, waved a hand. "I want to look at the scenery of the alley. You go back inside first. Tao, be obedient. Otherwise I really will become angry." The maid had no choice but to leave reluctantly. Every few steps, she turned her head to look back. The old man slowly released a turbid breath. He crossed the threshold, descended the steps, and walked to the nearest peach tree. Standing beneath it, he said sadly, "The peach tree is young and splendid, its blossoms blazing bright. I truly won't see this again." He turned to look at his own home. Then he murmured, "This town has been favored by heaven for too long. That itself is not in harmony with the great Tao. The sages once changed heaven and earth here, allowing the town to enjoy enormous fortune for 3,000 years. Those who left in every generation mostly spread their branches and descendants throughout Eastern Treasure Bottle continent. But old heaven keeps careful accounts. Now the time has come to settle them and collect the price. You children should leave while you can. Do you really intend to wait here and die together with old people like us? You must understand that death can be large or small. If several thousand people in this town die together, that will be a great death. Perhaps not even another life will remain afterward. So while old heaven is still keeping one eye open and one eye closed, as many people as possible should leave." The old man stretched out a withered hand and supported a peach branch. "People with attentive hearts. I only hope heaven does not fail those who truly have them." At some point, the grandmother of the young scholar Zhao Yao had arrived with her walking stick. She sneered, "You're almost in the grave and still this naive. It's more unpleasant than an old woman painting rouge on her face. You think this calamity can be changed by your little bit of kindness?" The old man's eyes became slightly unfocused. He looked at the woman whose hair, like his own, had turned completely white. Then, for no apparent reason, he said, "You came." The old woman froze. Then she immediately became furious from embarrassment. Her walking stick came swinging. "You shameless old bastard! At your age you're still flirting with your mouth?" The cane fell like rain. The old man could only flee. Yet even as he ran, he laughed loudly. The old woman remained beneath the peach tree. She was still furious. She regretted allowing her heart to soften. What madness had brought her to Peachleaf Alley in the first place? Eventually, she raised her head and looked at the newly budding peach leaves. Then she returned toward Fortune Street. Her cane struck loudly against the stone road. Chen Ping'an encountered the green-clad girl once more. She was quietly following behind a middle-aged man, head lowered while biting into a bird egg pancake. When the man saw Chen Ping'an, he stopped. "Are you the fellow I chased away last time?" Something slammed into the man's back. The green-clad girl had walked straight into the wall in front of her. She looked up in confusion. Then she suddenly noticed Chen Ping'an. She was just about to smile when she abruptly turned around and presented him with her back. Flustered, she hurriedly wiped her mouth. Chen Ping'an held back a laugh. He nodded politely toward the man. "Greetings, Master Ruan." So this girl was probably Master Ruan's daughter. The two of them did not look much alike. Fortunately, perhaps, they did not. The man Chen Ping'an addressed as Master Ruan was the blacksmith who had arrived in town not long ago and moved beside the stream to the south. He continued asking, "Why hasn't Liu Xianyang come to the forge these past few days?"